All right. Well, welcome everybody to the Produce Industry Podcast first live event. Now, I'm very excited to be doing this live event. I am live actually from Wood Lake, California. As you can see in the background, I've got some orange groves in the background. I have a very special guest today. And again, we're using a new streaming service called Restream that is going to be putting our live shows on Facebook and on YouTube and eventually on LinkedIn as well. So we have a lot of cool things that are coming. We enabled the chat feature to where you're able to ask Paul or any of our guests, which I will introduce, in actual comments and ask them questions during the live interview session. So we're going to get this kicked off, and we are going to start the Produce Industry Podcast's first live event. So let's get this kicked off, everyone, because I know you're excited. I'm excited. And then first off, we want to give a huge special thank you to our sponsors, Terra Exports, Ag Tools, Flavor Wave Fresh, Indianapolis Fruit Company, United Fresh, and our newest sponsor, John Green Logistics Company out of Titusville, Florida. So thank you to all of our sponsors. I'm really glad to be hosting this today and having a really special guest online today. So again, let's kick this off. All right. So welcome everybody to the Produce Industry Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Patrick Kelly, coming to you live from Wood Lake, California. Switched it up a little bit as we're not in Tampa. So we've got some cool things happening today. We have a very special guest. His name is Paul Stofberg. Now, normally you don't get to see my notes behind the camera or behind the mic, but today you get to. So we have Paul Stofberg on the line today. Paul has been with Profit for over 16 years. So Profit South America, or SA, which we're going to find a little bit more about today through Paul's leadership, through his journey in the produce industry. And really, I met Profit off a virtual networking call. George Romaine, who actually started joining a lot of our virtual networking sessions, came on the line and was like, you got to meet Paul, Patrick. Paul Stofberg is I would say, a diamond in the rough. He is a guy you're going to enjoy talking to. So we were able to set up the teams together. It took a few weeks to get, but now we are here. A couple other things just to announce. We have Brandstorm, United Fresh's Brandstorm coming up in March, which the Produce Industry Podcast is a sponsor of. So be sure to look out for some of those networking events. We're going to have some exclusive events coming to you live during March. And don't forget, February 24th, 2021, we have another virtual networking session that's going to be sponsored by Flavor Wave Fresh. And we're going to be talking a little bit more about digital marketing, and not just digital marketing, but how to really market yourself direct to consumers. So Paul, let's get a little bit about Paul going so he doesn't have to introduce himself. And I'm going to read a little bit about Paul right now. So, Paul started his career, and I love this, on an export citrus and grape farm after finishing school. If you know me, I'm a citrus guy. So that's what's fantastic about this. I love citrus. I got some questions for him. But Paul started his career as an intern at Cerealis Development Systems and had a passion for the fruit industry. You got to love someone that's got passion for our industry, right? You know what I mean? So listen, Paul has dedicated, really, I would say, 16 years, his career to the fresh produce and supply chain industry, technology, and growing our industry, as I say, together, everyone, right? Together. So listen, without further ado, I can talk forever, as you know as I can. Let's go ahead and get Paul Stofberg on the line today. Let's welcome him, everyone.
Morning,
there he is. Paul, how are we doing today?
Morning, Patrick. Thanks for having me.
Hey, fantastic to have you, my friend. And I believe when we spoke off the mic, we said you were coming to us live from
Thousand Oaks, California.
Thousand Oaks. So it's awesome. First time in the podcast history that we're both in California. I mean, I was thinking we were going to be doing this from Tampa. It was going to be 12 p.m. And now we're both sitting here at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. As you can tell, I'm happy as can be. Like I said, I got the orange groves behind me. I know you're probably looking at those thinking, going back to your early days, 16 years ago on the farm. But Paul, great to have you here today. And thank you so much for joining the Produce Industry Podcast's first live stream.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So I gave a little bit of background about you, talked about your passion for the industry, but I would like our listeners to really know Paul. I mean, listen, I could go on and on about you. We just met over the last couple weeks. Really, I don't want you to have to give the lowdown of here's my name, my number. I love long walks on the beach. No, no, no. Come on. Listen, let's talk about produce. Let's talk about the supply chain, and let's talk about your passion for that. So what I'd love for you to give our guests is a little bit of background of why you are passionate and so involved in the produce industry.
So, Patrick, I grew up on a grape and citrus farm in South Africa. And after going to school and all of that, really the passion, I wanted to be involved in produce, but I didn't really want to farm. So the next obvious thing was going into technology. And at that point, it seemed like there was a need for someone with some passion to go down that route and to provide solutions. And I just wanted to be involved. Whenever I'm talking to my parents, my dad is still a grape farmer. My brother still farms grapes. Whenever we talk around the barbecue, that we've got something in common, and we still have that. So yeah, it's been great. Basically dedicating my entire life in fresh produce. So yeah, it's been a great career so far.
And that's fantastic. I mean, I feel like I've dedicated my life to the fresh produce industry. You know, I started picking oranges in the fields of Florida, Paul, at the age of around 15. As far back as I can remember, my dad's been involved in California citrus and Florida citrus. And to me, it's like, all right, this is some cool stuff. Again, I worked for a very large packing house in California back in, I would say, geez, it's almost 15, 16 years ago now. I can't believe we're getting that old, man. It's like I can see this isn't blonde hair anymore for me. We're starting to get some grays in there, aren't we, Paul? We're starting to become some of the wise men that we once knew, right?
Yes, definitely.
But you know, I love citrus. I love the category. You know, and as I look at profit, you know, we've got a lot of information to go over, but we want to streamline it for everybody as well, right? We want to make sure they understand. I met George Romaine on a lot of my the virtual networking calls in 2020. George is a fantastic salesman that you got on your team, definitely active within the community, active within participating, and learning about ERP systems, sales systems, learning about what he's doing really got me thinking like, wait a minute. I don't even know who Profit is. So as I have the pamphlet, everyone, so like I said, you get to see all my notes. I actually printed this, and I probably shouldn't have. I've killed a lot of trees in this, Paul. But, I want to talk. I mean, I didn't know who Profit was before this, and it was really good to get some information. Looking at that, you guys are a leader in the global fresh supply chain industry. With consumers being driven to change so often, adapting to all of these obstacles, including ourselves, right, in the industry, we know that we have to change. There's new retail models coming out. Consumer trends are changing daily. So I would like to at least talk a little bit about, your flow at Profit and how you're adding value to the supply chain.
Look, Profit has been around for the last 30 years. Again, another passionate story. Our owner and president, Mark Peachy, grew up in a produce family. His dad owned produce markets, wholesale markets in London. And that's really where our software started. Our journey started 30 years ago in that process. That evolved into South Africa. And we eventually ended up in North America, where I'm now based for the last 4 years. And we keep on providing our services through the industry. We're really, again, a bunch of passionate guys involved in the process. And that's one of the nice things about Profit is you can pick up the phone, you can talk to the owners and the designers of the software and how we bring that passion to the game.
And, reading up on a lot of your material and doing some research, you guys play a pretty big part in the UK, in Europe. I know you guys play another part in South Africa as well. I kind of looked at this ever-growing trend of changes in 2020. If you've noticed, a lot of things changed in 2020. Some will say negative, some will say positive. If you ask me, I always say our glasses are overflowing, right, Paul? I mean,
Yes.
You can take it any side, but my glass is always overflowing, whether that's negative, positive, whatever that might be. That's kind of what it is. But as I start to see these changes in heavy retailers and even in the wholesaler space, as we're consolidating produce items, we're lowering SKUs, right? There are so many different changes happening. And when new systems and structures come, and I say new because, as you know, the produce industry, when profit goes to them, just like me, it's like, wait, who are you guys? Where have you guys been? It's one of those things where it's change and it happens. And I think 2020 put a lot of companies in change. But I think as the retailers, the wholesalers start consolidating more, how important is it to collaborate with a company like Profit through 2021 in the next 3 to 5 years?
No, I think it's very important, Patrick. If you think about it, we're involved in 3 different continents now. We've been through a lot of different cycles in terms of how the produce industry is changing in each of those continents that we operate in. And that gives us a real broad spectrum, especially from a design point of view, to look at what is happening in all these different markets and how can we shape and adapt our software to fit in with all the different markets and assist our customers. That's really where we are today, is in terms of the way we present software to our customers. It's very flexible and adaptable, so we can really fit in with the way that each of the customers want to work and to really streamline their business.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So I want to read a small quote that I have some information from, Business Insider. So Business Insider noted that individually, Walmart's U.S. market share, including that of its warehouse chains, and Sam's Club, totaled 21.3% last year. So you would look at approximately 21.3% is that Walmart and Sam's Club holds the market share in fresh produce and supply chain. So we look at these huge organizations, and I've got a very cool chart that was provided to me, everybody, by the people at Profit. And when you start looking at these, you start to realize too, is what do you need to do to really migrate and integrate your system with a lot of these players in the industry, how you go about creating market share with these organizations. Maybe as a point, Profit might have that ERP system or that system that could help get you into there. Because I know as a small grower, packer, shipper, Paul, ready? As a grower, packer, shipper in citrus, right? Small export, 1.5 million cases. I'm sitting here in my head going, what's this going to do for my company? Will this get me into larger organizations knowing that I'm a part of this larger program? Will this lower my costs later down the road? I mean, you come from that, grower, packer, shipper mentality, Paul. So I'm sitting here in Woodlake, California. The shed is literally just a couple miles down the street. How do I go to our president and say, you got to sign up with Profit because this is why it'll make a difference in our lives? Now, I'm not putting you on the spot for the direct answer, but how could this benefit a small grower, packer, shipper like myself?
Again, that's one of the nice things is we're involved in the entire supply chain, from harvest all the way to the supermarket. We're involved in all of the different elements. So we know what's involved in running a large organization, and we also know what's involved in running a small organization. In terms of a smaller organization fitting into this bigger atmosphere, you need to be able to plan on one side is plan how do you execute it, and then how do you communicate into these larger organizations. And that's where a big focus of Profit is in electronic data exchange, so that you're able to easily communicate what's being shipped today, what's already shipped, all of that type of stuff with the larger organizations, so it's easy for them to do business with you.
Yeah. All right. Well, that does make sense. So it's going to make it a little bit easier is what we're saying. It's going to make the process easier within the supply chain, which I think is good. And I think that a lot of, grower, packer, shippers, marketing companies, there's a whole aspect to this industry that we don't get, right, Paul? Yes. I always say this, if you did, and I'm going to take this back to what one of our sales managers is, I told him this morning, working for a grower, packer, shipper versus working for a large broker or a Fortune 500 company within industry, it's completely different, right? You know that growing up on the farm, it's almost like ready. I mean, like I got my hat on, I got my Fresno State hat on, everybody go Bulldogs, but it's like you wear so many different hats when it comes to this grower, packer, shipper mentality. And you almost feel, Paul, that we are being kind of pigeonholed, like, oh, we'll use this system and you can do this. And there's already so many systems out there that we're required to use from these retailers. You might have heard of some, maybe iTrade, right? There's these systems out there that we're required to use and spend so much money on. So in my head, and probably a lot of other people's head, it's like, why am I going to spend another 5 to 10 grand on this kind of stuff? What are we going to do? But it makes perfect sense now. We got to learn to streamline our processes and our businesses 100%.
Yes, and Patrick, at the end of the day, you spend the entire year on getting your crop ready, and then you start your harvesting process. And really, that 2 months that you're in your harvest and packing your product and shipping it to your customers, that's where you make your money. So you need to make sure that in that execution phase that you know where the product is going to go, exactly what's the customer requirements, how are you going to do all of that execution. So planning is really a big part of what Profit does at its core.
I love it.
To help you and assist you going through that process. Again, like you mentioned, the different systems you have to use coming from South Africa, which is a heavy export country. We export around the world, and the different standards, the global gaps, all of these different things that come into play that you have to maintain all the time. So it's just more and more that's being pushed down to the grower to be able to conform to all of these different standards.
My first unmute session, everyone. I didn't click the mute button off. Yeah, you're 100% right. So we are going to take a small little sponsorship break, everyone. I want to give a shout out to our sponsors before we get into the next couple topics here. Paul, there's some topics that I'm going to bring up and that I love that I've done some research on. It's going to be a little bit about the mindful consumers. I've got the slide right here because we're going to go over it. I think it's great that you're talking about, ready? Millennials and baby boomers, because there's a huge gap happening within the millennial and boomer space. And we're going to talk a little bit about that next. But let's give a shout out. Let's talk about our sponsors. In April of 2020, everyone, the Produce Industry Podcast started. And we started the Produce Industry Podcast on the strict nature, right? The strict, I would say, expedition, the journey, this line of path to create dynamite content and give local people, farm workers, frontline workers, packers, shippers, anybody within the supply chain industry, dynamite content from dynamite people within the industry. Well, that started with 1 or 2 simple voices. Our first real, I would say, sponsor was Michael Chavez with, Flavor Wave and Golden Star Citrus, seeing the vision and understanding what kind of content we could put out there. And we got Ag Tools next on the list, Terra Exports. We then traveled into United Fresh Produce Association, and then Indianapolis Fruit Company, and then all of a sudden, John Green Logistics. So we've got these dynamite sponsors that are ready to make dynamite content and see the Produce Industry Podcast grow together. Because the whole point of this podcast and of these shows, everyone, is to grow our industry together. It's not about sitting on the sidelines anymore. It's not about telling, oh, well, this is what I did 20 years ago, or this is what I've done, and this is why you should do it. Let's collaborate together. Let's bring the industry together, and let's focus on what we've always been focused on, which is fresh produce into the world, onto the globe is where it is. So let's do that. But more importantly, let's do that together. So a shout out and a special thanks to all of our sponsors here at the Produce Industry Podcast in helping preserve and grow our industry together. So let's get Paul back. We're gonna get him back on and finish with Paul and talk more with Paul. So Paul, thanks for taking that quick break, and great to have you back, man.
Thank you. So
before my quick sponsorship break, I said the word. I said it. Millennials, boomers, the 2 generations that people think are clashing, like a clash of the titans, right, Paul? But if you look at it from another side, it's all about how to work and thrive together. I published a book in 2018, Paul, that was called Millennial Boom: How to thrive together, is how to work and thrive together with millennials and boomers in and outside of work. And I think it's so important because, 5 years ago when I saw this vision, I was being told by all the boomers, be careful, be careful. You're biting the hand that feeds you, Patrick. And what I realized, though, was the millennials, 82 million in population, Paul, versus the baby boomers that are at 76 million and retiring almost every single day. There's thousands retiring every single day, thousands passing away every day, which is so sad. But passing that legacy of the torch. And one of the slides that I loved, man, I loved it. So the mindful consumer, right? And I know you know this. So we were looking about millennials are almost 4 times, everybody, more likely than baby boomers to avoid buying products from multinational food companies. I just said it again, didn't I? Earlier, we said that it's a big difference buying from local grower packer shippers than from Fortune 500 companies, right, Paul?
No, definitely. At the end of the day, people want to know where their food's coming from these days. And they don't want to be told a story. They want something they can believe and something they can relate to.
Well, it's been more obvious. I mean, if you look at my buddy with Chip Carter with Southeast Produce Weekly, they've started this show called Where the Food Comes From. And it's starting to blow up because, Paul, people like you and me, the everyday person, now gets to go in and say, where did my pineapple come from? Where did my dragon fruit come from? Are limes grown in the United States? Heck, I remember, Paul, ready? Please stop me at any point, but you're laughing at this. So in 2013, I was on Fox News, KC24 in Fresno, California. We had just brought the first pineapples of our brand to the Central Valley of California. And so as I go on live TV, the gentleman said he literally thought the pineapples were grown here in the valley. And then he thought pineapples were grown on a tree. And it was so interesting because people really don't understand that, Paul. They really think, oh, no, it's grown on a tree in Arizona or New York or this. People don't realize that, probably over 70% of asparagus comes from South America, right? 90% of limes come from Mexico. So you're right. Being that mindful consumer, it's very important. So as Profit's growing their business, how do you keep that mindful consumer in mind?
Well, we assist our customers in being able to utilize our software through the traceability to be able to tell that story to their customers. So where did this product come from? How was it handled? Which processor did it go through? How did it end up on the shelf? And all of those things so that people can end up being able to tell that story.
Well, listen, with fresh produce, it's hard to get a loyalist on board, right? It's hard to really get someone to stay on your product, especially a brand. And we've seen this in 2020, 2021. Everybody's talking about how to brand their commodities. Fresh produce, ready, is an unusual and challenging mass market product. It can spoil, decay, or become unsafe to consume if not kept refrigerated properly, okay? So maintaining just the harvest state of the fresh produce, I would say, presents an enormous challenge. Now, this comes directly from your company's line of work. And I think that's very important because in 2020, we saw some of the freshest produce around, whether it's for the USDA box programs or grocery stores keeping their shelf stocked because of I would not say lack of inventory, but the lack of just-in-time inventory that they wanted to keep in the distribution center. We all saw that. So everybody was ordering more, but it was more of just-in-time delivery to keep the shelf stocks because most people were not going into the store. So what would you say, looking at 2020 and looking at some of the challenges that were brought to you, how have you overcome that? And what were some of those lessons learned, through and from technology, if you could?
Well, so most of our customers, which is really closer to the consumer, they had to change their businesses and change quickly, which was good. They could use our planning tools to see, listen here, some of this business is now shifting. We have to move it down different channels. How do we quickly adapt our business? and how do we place the product in different channels and still keep our business going.
And that's one of the hardest things, right? I mean, taking a lesson learned and bringing it after a pandemic. I told everybody I wasn't going to talk about the pandemic all throughout 2021, but it's true. We've got lessons learned. And as I talk about a lot, Paul, in my virtual calls, is you could come to the table, right? Just like right now, we're at the table, you're at the seat of the table. But when you don't execute after the fact, when you don't follow up, when you don't create the blueprint to success, right? That's when you start seeing those shortcomings and those failures, right? So we all have to take some of those lessons learned and really grow, like I said, the industry together. So talk to me a little bit about the future. We want to talk about what opportunity is coming in Profit's pipeline. What can we expect from Profit, over the next year or 2 years or 3 years? What kind of things can we expect from Profit?
So there's a lot of things coming, Patrick. But the big items is we provide a lot of automation at the end of the day to be able to, if you look at a workflow and how you're shipping your product on a day-to-day basis and just managing that supply chain, all the different elements that needs to happen, we build in a lot of automation down the chain so that it's easy to go and execute that so that you are in a position where you can scale your business and grow your business. On top of that, we're focusing a lot on analytics so people can see what went wrong, why did it go wrong. So, because at the end of the day, again, as a small grower shipper, that one truck that left that you're not making money on is hitting your bottom line. So you have to be able to, at a very granular level, be able to see what's going on in your business and that one truck that left that we're not making money on, what went wrong. And how do I pinpoint exactly what went wrong so that I can fix it so it doesn't happen again.
That's incredible. It's incredible. I'm looking forward to watching Profit, like I said. And I know I keep saying it, Paul, and you're like, please be quiet. But learning about Profit, this is a new organization for me. And I never was on the side of learning about some of this technology. I was always on the buyer side, the sales side, until I got, I would say, how do you say the word not old, Paul? Help me out here. How do you say it? Would it be seasoned? Would it be, I can't say veteran. I mean, yeah, I've been in the industry for 16 years, but I'm not going to say what my dad says. Oh, I'm just an old wise guy. No, I'm not an old wise man. But I guess being seasoned a little bit, I was blind to some of this stuff, Paul. I really was. And these are things that I'm learning every day about the produce and supply chain industry, about how great companies are out there creating dynamite technology, dynamite systems, and just exploding in areas that we never even saw before. Michael Chavez, one of my partners in Flavor Wave, is there's so many things that if we were to go back, Paul, go back to February of 2020, and I think some of the things that we were introduced to in 2020, we were like, wait a minute, what is this stuff? Where are we going with this? Like, if we were to have that conversation, Paul, right, with George, I would say in 2019, we would have told, George, get out of here. We don't need this. We don't want this, and now it's 2021. Yeah, now George and I are talking and we're hooking. I'm going, hey, we need to learn more about this. We need to understand really what this is. And, that's about the journey, right? I mean, that journey is going to take you somewhere that you have no idea. I'm going to read another quote from your pamphlet, because I went through the entire pamphlet. And this is what's great about being live, everybody, is that these are all the back notes that you don't get to see when I do my podcast interviews, because it's not like I just know everybody. I'm getting to know everybody right now as we speak. We're getting to know each other together. So to the extent you can start the journey now, there can be more effective levers to pull when times are more challenging. Align human capital with advancing digital capabilities. Co-investing in talent and technology can be a powerful partnership. That came right from Profit. Paul, that's a powerful statement, my friend. I mean, I think it's powerful, and I think it shows the industry what you're doing.
No, it is. And I think one thing that 2020 has taught us is that technology has had a major shift happen in 2020. Everybody had to adapt. Even the larger organizations at the scale of the Microsoft level, if you see the speed of how quickly technology had to roll out in organizations, I think we've took 5 years off how it would normally happen. So everything was just truncated into 1 year.
Gotcha. Yeah, like I said, the 2020 overflowing, not negative, overflowing, right? Overflowing with massive, massive opportunities. And that's the kind of where I wanted to keep it at. So, Paul, it's been great to have you on our first live session with the Produce Industry Podcast. The show must go on, obviously. We're going to be on the podcast later down the road. We've got new episodes coming daily. Really, like I said, daily. We are recording and we'll be posting every Monday. And these live streams are going to start coming out more and more, integrating and working with great people like yourself, Paul. So if anybody would like to get a hold of Profit, get a hold of yourself, get a hold of your team, how can they really go about doing that?
You can find us on all the main items, LinkedIn, our page on there, our website, www.profitize.com. It's got all of our information on.
Fantastic. Well, Paul, I want to thank you for coming on the show today. I thank Profit for what you're doing in the produce and supply chain industry, and we will see you very soon on another episode of the Produce Industry Podcast.
Thanks for the opportunity, Patrick. It's very nice talking to you.
Well, everyone, that was our first live stream. That's right. We had Paul Stofberg on from Profit. Listen, I've learned a lot. I hope you learned a lot through this. We are going to have live streaming sessions coming to you every single month with new sponsors and new companies that you might have never known that existed in the produce and supply chain industry. And I say it like that because I'm learning and creating and building knowledge every day that I never knew that was there. So everyone, I want to thank you for joining this live session today. I want to thank you for watching the interview with Paul Stofberg and growing our industry together. I'll see you in the fields.